Hello, I'm Darren Ingram, audio designer at Sight and Sound Theaters in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and in this video we're going to look at integrating the control room mixer from Nuendo into TouchOSC. We're going to take a look at what is needed to do that. So you see, this is a template I've built to match the control room mixer window. The thing that has always driven me crazy about the control room mixer window is that it's its own separate window. So when you're editing, you're going along, and then you simply want to turn the volume down. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's enough to drive me crazy. You have to switch over to this window, change your focus, do whatever you're going to do, then switch back over to your editing, when all I want to do is reach up here and go, and then that's it. So I made the control room window a template, along with a few other transport controls, and even reads the current time code that it's in. So just real quick, let me go through here. I got the control room mixer and ISO booth feeds faders. Then I have 3 more faders up here, but these are all functioning as meters. That's my talkback input. That you can hear that as it's my microphone is picking me up. This meter above the ISO booths, this shows what the ISO booths are receiving, what the talent and the ISO booths are receiving, and this meter right here shows what's coming through the control room. These are simple transport: stop, play, record, rewind, it's hard to see, fast forward, and then of course our time code. Then I have a few buttons. Talkback enable. This allows me to send my talkback to the booths. And then talkback active. I don't necessarily hit this button every time I want to talk, but I have a keyboard command for it. And what that does is it allows me to, it's a big nice red button which lets me know that I'm being heard by the talent in there. Now, there's a difference. These are buttons, these are toggles. The difference is when I hit a button and let up, it's off. When I hit a toggle, it's on, then I have to hit it one more time to turn off. That's the difference between those. Toggle, talk back, and then I have 2 separate speaker systems here in the studio. I have a pair of stereo Genelecs and a consumer level Onkyo surround system that I'll use to listen to things in surround. Those are toggles. Now, let's take a look at what I had to do in order to build this in the editor. That's the actual editor. So you'll notice it looks just like the TouchOSC, except for the time code here. It just says TC. That's because the time code is a little bit of a special deal. This is simply a label, a text label. Now, text labels can receive string inputs, words, numbers, that kind of stuff, but they don't send, so we had to treat it a little bit differently than the rest of them. Of course, these are all faders that I set up. Now these texts down here, you can put text anywhere you want, and you can make it whatever size and everything that you need. Right here, labels is what they're called. And so you'll see these buttons here. Now these buttons, those are actual texts in the middle of those buttons. So I make the buttons, I assign them to a device within Nuendo like we did in the other videos, but these texts, I put the text on top of them. But you'll notice TouchOSC handles it by making it look like that. It's kind of cool. Now you'll see that the faders, I just name them. Like there's the ISO feed level. That's the fader that controls the level to the ISO booths. And that's all I do. I just call it ISO feed level. You notice it's all one word, and then it assigns it a channel. Did that for all the faders, even the meters, even the ISO booth meter. It's still a fader as well, but I just call it ISO feed meter. Then it gives it that channel. Page 1, ISO feed meter. Same thing for the buttons. I don't do anything special between the buttons and the faders. Like here's our talkback button. I just call it TB active, and it assigns it a channel. /1 TB active. I don't have to do anything other than that. So I did that for all my buttons, all my faders. I just gave them a name. And even the time code label. Let's take a look at that real quick. I just call it time code. And then the text TC. Now labels, you can do that. You can name them different. You can give them special names, like let's look at the record here. That's the record label. I call it record label, which means the widget itself, and then on the text you can decide what you actually want it to show, record. So the name is different than what it shows. So that's basically how I built the control room. Let's take a look at Osculator on how all this plugs into each other. Now you'll see that's the time code at the very top. That's what sends our time code. It's a little bit of a special deal out of a Nuendo. I'll cover that here in just a minute. You'll see all the, right here, these are all the widgets that are sending MIDI commands. We just saw CR volume level, volume meter, the Genelec select, that's my button that selects my Genelec speakers, ISO feed and ISO feed meter. So you can see these are all the labels from the OSC, and then here's the channels that I assigned them myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. These are 0 through 13. Now those are the addresses on channel 16. So they're all on MIDI channel 16. And then I just gave them sequential addresses. Now below there, you'll see the MIDI channels that are coming from Nuendo. This is MIDI channel 16, address 0. OSC is routing it back to control room volume level on page 1. So you'll notice control room volume level is sending on address 0. These are all channel 16s. And then it's sending back MIDI data on address 0 back to volume level. Because we have it where it's sending and receiving on the same channel, regardless of where I move it, whether I move it on TouchOSC or whether I move it on Nuendo, they're going to match each other. They're always going to be moving regardless of which one I move. So I assigned the MIDI channels coming back out to all the buttons and all the faders. And now let's take a look at what I did within Nuendo. Now I'm going to devices and device setup. You've seen these in the other videos. You can see that I set up devices ISO booth feed. Down here it's always matched with a device item. This is the MIDI item, this is the device item down here. So MIDI channel 16, these are all 16 just because I put it there. Address 0 is going to be the VST control room volume, receiving and transmitting on that flag, because I want to be able to, I want the widget to match the device item on Nuendo. You'll notice a couple here that are transmit only. These are the meters, control room meter and ISO booth meter. There's nothing for me to send from TouchOSC. I just want TouchOSC to see it. So that data is transmitted only. And so down here you can see some things we've not messed with before on the transport. We selected a transport device for stop. And you'll notice on this, there is no other device on transport. Like VST control room, you have control room, talkback, and ISO booths. But down here in transport, just device. Some are that way. But then it gives you all the things that transport can, or that you can control in the transport. So now I just hit the stop button. So that's our device setup within Nuendo. And so that's basically the ins and outs of that. But let's take a look at this up here real quick, the time code. You can see down here we have our time code. That's just a label field. So the thing is, with our label field, when I made it in our editor, there is no signal coming from our editor into Osculator. It's just a label field. It's only set to either display or receive. So in Osculator, what I had to do, there it is. You can see that up here. This is our time code coming out. And I'll show you how to get that from Nuendo in a second. OSC routing was going to our time code. You'll see it down here. Time code. Now the thing about that is, because you've seen it in the other videos where I move a fader, Osculator registers it, and it automatically appears as a drop-down. Can't do that with just a label. So I had to go into here, into New, and see where it says address. I had to type it in myself. Not a big deal, you just have to know what the widget's called. Page 1, then I just typed time code. And then it appears as a selectable in the drop-down list. Time code. Then I can select it now. Now over here in Nuendo, the time code is not sent out through the regular devices. It is a little bit of a different deal. I'm going to hold the iPad. I'll try to keep it steady enough. But for this, you have to go into Transport, Project Synchronization Setup. Now down here, you'll see Nuendo, MIDI time code out. And over here, oscillator in. You have to have that selected. Once that's selected, it will automatically just send MIDI time code. Oscillator handles it separately. You don't have to use a MIDI channel for it. It sends it on its own OSC routing. You select what the widget is that you want to go to, one time code, and it automatically comes to here. All right, so that's the basics of the control room. Hope that works out for you, and thanks a lot.